Have you noticed what happens after every single attack? The families of victims release statements, and they're always oddly similar, generic, carefully worded, full of calls for calm, unity, for not using the tragedy to fuel division. Sometimes they even throw in lines about migrants contributing to the NHS, or how the attack had nothing to do with race or religion. It's almost as if someone wrote them a template. Maybe because they did.
A secretive government unit has been accused of covertly burying the truth about the racial tensions tearing our country apart, and also of, quote, engineering the thoughts of people at times of crisis, such as terrorist incidents or incidents linked to racially linked crimes. A source has accused the secretive spy unit of planting stories, coaching families of victims on their statements, and pushing propaganda to paint concerned Britons as villains.
The UK government has a secretive office inside the Home Office whose job it is to step in after brutal attacks by migrants and manage how the public and victims' families are allowed to respond. It's called the Research, Information and Communications Unit, RICU. It's a domestic propaganda operation, a nudge unit. A thought police squad that intervenes whenever the consequences of mass migration risk becoming too obvious to the public. After the attack in Belfast last week, RICU identified people organising protests online and advised police on how to portray those protesters, not as concerned citizens but as unsympathetic thugs. They were also briefing family liaison officers on how the messaging should go. The family of the victim, Stephen Ogilvie, released a statement. This is what they said. We have many migrants who make a deeply valuable contribution to our country, including in our healthcare system and hospitality sector, and we depend on them to make our country work. We do not want this terrible tragedy to be used to divide people or fuel hostility. That was the line they went with, right after Ogilvie was almost beheaded in the street. The same pattern followed the murder of Henry Novak, despite Mark Novak, Henry's father, describing the police's treatment of their son as inhumane and degrading. He also said this: "We do not want his death to be used to create further division, hatred or tension." Again, the same oddly generic tone that appears whenever these incidents happen. Strategic input, carefully managed statements. The same pivot away from raw grief and towards approved talking points about inclusivity and not letting division win. That's exactly what the RICU does. It briefs family liaison officers. It makes sure the narrative doesn't run away from the authorities. The influence of this unit even appears to have coerced police in the Novak case to run with the racist self-defense smear, even when it became abundantly clear to investigators that the killer had invented all of that. This isn't speculation anymore. Multiple reports, including from insiders and people who've looked into this unit for years, confirm that the RICU steps in after these incidents. They make sure the public response is shaped. They make sure the narrative stays on message. This was just a one-off. It had nothing to do with the policies that brought the perpetrators here, and anyone who notices the pattern is the real problem. They import people from countries where this kind of violence is commonplace. They fail to properly screen or integrate them. Then when the inevitable happens, they spend taxpayers' money running psychological operations to convince everyone that noticing is the real crime. The family statements end up sounding like they were written by committee. Our loved one. We must not let this divide us. Migrants make a valuable contribution. It's the same script rolled out over and over again, and the unit behind it has form. It was modelled on the old Research Information Department, the Cold War propaganda outfit that used to plant stories and shape public opinion against communism. Now it's being used against the British people who are concerned over the impact of mass migration. This isn't about stopping violence, it's about managing perception. When the consequences of open borders and failed integration become impossible to ignore, the state doesn't fix the policy. It sends in the nudge unit to script the response. This is what governing looks like when you've lost control of the consequences of your own policies. Instead of fixing the border, protecting the public, they build a machine to manage the public's reaction to the failures. They want the families to say the right things. They want the public to swallow the don't look back in anger stance. Instead of the obvious questions about how someone who shouldn't be here was able to commit these acts, they want protesters to be demonized as the problem, not the policy that produced the attackers.
Now, if you want an example as to how this spy unit works, here's what a source told the Daily Mail. They are working with the police service of Northern Ireland's C3 intelligence unit to identify those posting the online calls to protest in Belfast and other areas, as well as giving strategic messages to the police to ensure that the protesters were portrayed as unsympathetic thugs rather than activists and affecting behavioural change.
They obviously treat grieving families as just another audience that needs to be nudged back onto the approved script. They think if they can just control the narrative tightly enough, script the grief, rebrand the protesters, throttle the discussion, then maybe people will stop noticing that the country is changing in ways nobody voted for and nobody wanted.
After the London Bridge terror attack, the unit allegedly handed out flowers in the area with the aim of creating an atmosphere of grief rather than anti-Muslim anger. A team in an unmarked van also are alleged to have covered walls with posters containing hashtags such as Turn to Love, hashtag For London and hashtag Love Will Win.
But they're not fooling everyone, and the more these units get exposed, and the more obvious it becomes that the real threat to social cohesion isn't people noticing what's happening on the streets. It's the people in government who decided that the truth itself needs to be stage managed and scripted.
If you value what I do and you want to help support me, please visit pauljosephwatson.locals.com and either pledge a one-time donation or subscribe to join my community, get early access videos and message me directly. And exclusive live streams coming soon too. Promise. Check out the Locals link down in the description. And don't forget to take a look at the brand new website modernity.news. That's where you'll find all my content, including exclusive articles. That's modernity.news.